They dressed her in a wedding gown meant for someone else and shoved her toward a man the entire city feared. Claire Hastings had spent 3 years invisible in her own home, scrubbing floors, swallowing insults, becoming a ghost. But tonight, her stepmother's desperation would force her into the most dangerous bargain of all: marriage to Adrian Kane, the ruthless crime lord everyone whispered about in shadows. What they didn't know was that the broken girl in the borrowed dress was about to walk into something far more twisted than any of them could imagine. If you want to see how far this story goes, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Let's see how far Claire's journey reaches. The crystal vase shattered against the marble floor 3 inches from Claire's left foot. She didn't flinch, didn't even look up from where she knelt, scrubbing at the wine stain that had been there since Victoria's dinner party last week. The shards glittered in the afternoon light streaming through the tall windows of the Whitmore Estate's grand foyer, and Claire thought absently that she'd need to get the broom before someone stepped on them. "Are you deaf?" Victoria's voice cut through the silence like a whip crack. "I called you 20 minutes ago." Claire sat back on her heels, pushing a strand of dark hair out of her face with the back of her hand. Her knees ached. Everything ached these days. "I was cleaning the—" "I don't care what you were cleaning." Victoria stood at the top of the curved staircase, one manicured hand resting on the banister. She wore cream today, silk that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Her dark hair was swept up in some complicated style that Claire knew took her stylist 2 hours to perfect. Madeline spilled something in her bathroom. Go deal with it. Claire looked down at the wine stain, half cleaned, the water in her bucket turned gray. "I'm almost done here." "Did I ask if you were almost done?" No, Victoria never asked. She commanded, and Claire obeyed, because that was how things worked in the house that used to be Claire's home. She stood slowly, her back protesting. 23 years old, and she moved like she was twice that. The dress she wore, one of Victoria's cast-offs from God knows when, hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight. Happened when you forgot to eat most days. "Well?" Victoria's foot tapped against the marble. "I don't have all day." Claire grabbed the bucket and headed for the stairs. As she passed Victoria, she caught the scent of expensive perfume, something French and floral that probably had a waiting list. Victoria didn't move, forcing Claire to squeeze past her on the narrow landing. "You missed a spot," Victoria said to her, retreating back. "On the floor. I can still see the stain." Of course she could. Madeline's bathroom looked like a tornado had hit it. Clothes everywhere, makeup scattered across the counter, towels on the floor. And yes, bright red nail polish spilled across the white tile, already dried into a sticky mess. Claire stared at it for a long moment. Then she got on her hands and knees and started scrubbing. This was her life now. This had been her life for 3 years, ever since her father died, and Victoria had pulled out papers that somehow, magically, transferred everything into her name. The house, the money, the business holdings that Claire's grandfather had built and her father had maintained. All of it. Gone. Claire could still remember the lawyer's office, the way Victoria had sat there with her hands folded in her lap while the man droned on about debts and restructuring and legal obligations. Claire had been 20, still in college, still believing that the world was fundamentally fair. That lawyer had cured her of that notion real quick. "Your father made some unfortunate financial decisions," he'd said, not meeting Claire's eyes. "Mrs. Hastings has been generous enough to allow you to remain in the family home." Generous. That was one word for it. The nail polish wasn't coming up. Claire scrubbed harder, her shoulders burning. She'd need acetone, probably, which meant going down to the basement, which meant walking past Victoria again, which meant another comment about how slow Claire was, how useless, how lucky she was to have a roof over her head. She was still scrubbing when she heard voices downstairs, male voices, deep and unfamiliar. Claire paused, listening. "Assure you, Mr. Kane will be very pleased with the arrangement." That was Victoria, but her voice sounded different, tight, almost scared. Claire stood, moving quietly to the bathroom door. From here she could hear better, the voices floating up through the house's old heating vents. "Mrs. Hastings, you understand that Mr. Kane doesn't tolerate disappointment." A man's voice, cold and professional. "The agreement was very clear. The wedding takes place this Saturday, 4 days from now." "Wedding?" Claire crept closer to the vent, her heart suddenly pounding. Yes, of course. I understand completely. Victoria's voice had that high, brittle quality she got when she was lying. And your daughter understands the expectations? Madeline is thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. Silence. Then, good. Because the debt your late husband accumulated with our organization is substantial. This marriage alliance is the only reason Mr. Kane agreed to forgive it. If anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong, Victoria interrupted. I give you my word. Saturday, then, 7 o'clock, St. Michael's Cathedral. Mr. Kane has made the arrangements. Your daughter should be ready by 6. A car will collect her. Footsteps. The front door opening and closing. Then silence. Claire stood frozen in the bathroom doorway, her mind racing. Victoria was marrying off Madeline? To who? And what debt were they talking about? She should go back to cleaning, should pretend she'd heard nothing, But her feet were already moving, carrying her out of the bathroom and down the stairs. She found Victoria in the sitting room, collapsed on the antique sofa with her head in her hands. Who was that? Claire asked from the doorway. Victoria's head snapped up. For just a second, something that might have been fear flickered across her face. Then it hardened into the cold mask Claire knew so well. That's none of your concern. You're selling Madeline to some man named Kane? I'm securing this family's future, something you've never been able to help with. Claire stepped into the room. What debt was he talking about? What did Dad, your father, Victoria said, her voice sharp enough to cut, destroyed this family? Did you know that? Did you have any idea what he was doing while you were off at college, playing at being an art major? He didn't destroy anything. I what? Tried to save something from the wreckage? Victoria stood, her silk dress rustling. Your father gambled. Did you know that? Not just cards or horses, businesses, investments. He made deal after deal with the wrong people, borrowed money from men who don't forget debts. And when he died, her voice cracked. When he died, I was left with nothing but bills and threats and a spoiled little girl who thought she deserved everything handed to her on a silver platter. The words hit like physical blows. That's not... Dad wouldn't... Ask me how I know. Victoria moved closer. Ask me how many men showed up at the door after the funeral, asking for money. Ask me how many times I've had to negotiate, to plead, to sell off everything piece by piece just to keep this roof over our heads. Go on. Ask. Claire couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up. Adrian Kane, Victoria continued, owns half this city. What he doesn't own, he controls. He offered to forgive the debt, all of it, in exchange for a marriage alliance, a wife from a respectable family. So yes, Madeline will marry him, and she'll do it with a smile, because that's what people do when they actually care about their family. She's barely 21. She's old enough to understand sacrifice, something you've never learned. Victoria's eyes were cold. Now get out, and if you breathe a word of this to anyone, I'll throw you out of this house so fast your head will spin. Are we clear? Claire turned and left. She made it to the third-floor landing before her legs gave out. She sat down hard on the top step, her hands shaking. Her father, gambling, debts. No, that couldn't be right. Richard Hastings had been careful with money, conservative. He'd built his business through steady investments and smart decisions, not risks. Except Claire had been away at school those last 2 years, had only come home for holidays and summer breaks. She'd been so focused on her classes, her friends, her own life that she'd barely noticed the shadows growing under her father's eyes, the way he'd started drinking more at dinner, the hushed phone conversations that stopped when she entered the room. Maybe Victoria was telling the truth. Maybe Claire had been blind. The next 3 days passed in a blur. The house filled with people, florists, caterers, a seamstress who arrived with a wedding dress in a garment bag and disappeared into Madeline's room for hours at a time. Claire caught glimpses of white silk through the partially open door, heard her stepsister's voice raised in protest, heard Victoria's sharp responses. But Madeline didn't fight. Not really. She tried on the dress, sat for the hair and makeup trials, went through all the motions like a puppet. Claire tried to talk to her once. She knocked on Madeline's door Wednesday evening, waited for the irritated "what?" before entering. Madeline sat at her vanity, still in the wedding dress, her face blotchy from crying. She looked up when Claire entered, her expression hardening. Come to gloat? What? No, I just... Claire closed the door behind her. Are you okay? Do I look okay? You don't have to do this. You could... I could what? Madeline's laugh was bitter. Run away and let Mother deal with the consequences? Do you have any idea what these people do to families who break agreements? Who is he? This Adrian Kane? Does it matter? Madeline turned back to the mirror, her hands trembling as she touched the lace on the dress. Mother says he's powerful, dangerous, that he'll treat me well as long as I behave. She met Claire's eyes in the reflection. She says I'm lucky, that most girls would kill for this opportunity. You don't believe that? I don't know what I believe anymore. Madeline's voice dropped to a whisper. Go away, Claire. You can't help. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to find some solution, some way out. But what could she offer? She had no money, no influence, no power. She couldn't even save herself, much less someone else. She left Madeline alone with her fear. Friday night, Claire lay in her narrow bed on the third floor, staring at the water-stained ceiling and listening to the sounds of the house settling around her. Tomorrow Madeline would marry a stranger. Tomorrow Victoria would trade her daughter for debt forgiveness. Tomorrow everything would change and Claire would still be here, invisible and powerless, scrubbing floors until what? Until Victoria got tired of her and threw her out? Until the house was finally sold to pay off the last of the debts? Until Claire was so beaten down she forgot there'd ever been anything else? She must have fallen asleep eventually because the screaming woke her. Claire jerked upright, her heart pounding. The clock on her nightstand read 3:47 a.m. Downstairs, Victoria's voice rose in a shriek that made the windows rattle. What do you mean she's gone? Claire threw off her blanket and ran for the stairs. She made it to the second-floor landing before she saw the chaos below. Lights blazing, Victoria in her robe standing in the foyer with a piece of paper clutched in her shaking hand, and a man in a dark suit standing near the door with his arms crossed. The same man who'd come 4 days ago. Mrs. Hastings, he said, his voice calm in contrast to Victoria's hysteria. I suggest you lower your voice and think very carefully about your next move. I don't know where she is. I checked on her at midnight. She was in bed, and now she's not. The man's expression didn't change. You have a wedding in 15 hours, and no bride. Claire descended the rest of the stairs slowly. Victoria's head whipped around, her eyes wild. You, she hissed. You must have known, must have helped her. I've been asleep. Claire looked at the paper in Victoria's hand. What's going on? Victoria thrust the note at her. Claire took it with numb fingers. Mother, I'm sorry, but I can't marry him. Derek and I left an hour ago. We're driving to the coast, then flying to Mexico. Maybe Mr. Kane's people can't reach us there. I know you'll be angry, but I'd rather have you angry than dead. Tell Claire she was right. Some things aren't worth the price. Claire read it twice. Derek Martinez, Madeline's on-again, off-again boyfriend, the trust fund kid with the Corvette and the trust issues. Of course. When? The man by the door asked. I don't know. Sometime after midnight. Victoria's voice cracked. I'll find her. I'll call her friends. I'll track her phone. You have 15 hours, Mrs. Hastings. 15 hours to produce a bride at St. Michael's Cathedral, or the deal is off. And when Adrian Kane's deals fall through, he let the sentence hang in the air like a noose. Please? Victoria's voice dropped to something raw and desperate that Claire had never heard before. Give me more time. Just a few days, I can convince her to come back. There is no more time. The man checked his watch. Expensive, platinum, the kind that costs more than a car. 6 o'clock this evening. A bride. Any bride. Or you can explain to Mr. Kane why his wedding is off and your debt is suddenly due in full. He walked out without another word. The silence he left behind was absolute. Victoria stood frozen, the note still in her hand, her chest heaving. Then, slowly, her head turned toward Claire. No, Claire said immediately. Whatever you're thinking, you're about the same height, same coloring. Victoria's voice had gone flat, mechanical. With the right dress, the right makeup, are you insane? He's never met Madeline in person. All the arrangements were made through intermediaries. He's seen one photograph, but nothing. Claire backed toward the stairs. I'm not doing this. I'm not... You can't make me. Can't I? Victoria moved closer, her eyes gleaming with something desperate and dangerous. You live in my house, Claire. Eat my food. Sleep under my roof. You have nothing. No money, no prospects, no future. I could throw you out tonight with the clothes on your back, and no one would even notice you were gone. The truth of it hit like a fist to the stomach. But I won't do that, Victoria continued, her voice dropping to something almost gentle. Do this for me, for this family, and I'll give you what you've always wanted: freedom, money, enough to actually leave, to build a real life somewhere else. Isn't that what you want? You want me to lie to a man who scares you so much you're shaking. I want you to save us. Victoria's mask slipped, just for a second, and Claire saw real fear underneath. Please, they'll kill Madeline if they find her, and they will find her. Derek's an idiot who can't plan 2 hours ahead. But if you give them a bride, if you just walk down that aisle and say the words, they won't care. It's about the alliance, not the girl. And when he realizes I'm not her, then you figure it out. Victoria grabbed Claire's shoulders. You're smart, smarter than Madeline ever was. You can handle this. Just get through the ceremony, play the dutiful wife for a few weeks, and then negotiate a divorce settlement. Adrian Kane is rich beyond imagining. I'm sure he'll pay handsomely to make an inconvenient wife disappear. Claire stared at her stepmother and saw the truth written clearly in every line of her face. Victoria didn't care if Claire lived or died. She cared about saving herself, protecting Madeline, maintaining her comfortable life. If Claire ended up dead in a ditch somewhere, well, that was a risk Victoria was willing to take. The smart thing would be to refuse, to pack her few belongings and walk out right now, let Victoria face the consequences of her own choices. But Claire thought about her father, about the gentle man who'd loved her and failed her in equal measure. Thought about the business her grandfather had built, the legacy that had somehow turned to ash and debt. Thought about Madeline, stupid and spoiled, but still only 21, still someone who'd smiled at Claire once or twice before Victoria had poisoned everything. Maybe walking away would be smart. But Claire had never been smart about family. One condition, she heard herself say. Victoria's eyes lit up. Name it. When this is over, you give me everything. The real accounting of Dad's estate, the documents, the truth about what happened to his money, all of it. Done. Too easy. Victoria agreed too fast, which meant she was lying. But Claire was out of options and out of time. The wedding's at 7, Victoria said, already moving, already planning. We need to get you ready by 6. The dress will fit. You're thinner than Madeline anyway. Hair, makeup, I'll call the team. I'll do it myself. Victoria paused. Claire, I said I'll do it myself. Claire's voice came out harder than she intended. Just give me the dress. Victoria studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Fine, but don't screw this up, for both our sakes. She disappeared upstairs, leaving Claire alone in the foyer with the dawn light starting to creep through the windows. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed 4:30. In 13.5 hours, Claire would marry a stranger. The dress arrived at noon, delivered by the same nervous seamstress who'd been fitting Madeline all week. She wouldn't meet Claire's eyes as she hung it on the back of the door. It might be a little long, she murmured. Your sister's taller. I'll manage. The woman fled. Claire spent the afternoon in a kind of fugue state. Showered, washed her hair, sat on her bed in her robe and stared at the dress hanging on the door like an accusation. It was beautiful. Objectively, undeniably beautiful. Layers of ivory silk, delicate lace, a fitted bodice that probably cost more than Claire had seen in years. The kind of dress little girls dreamed about. Claire felt nothing looking at it. At 5 o'clock, she started getting ready. Foundation from Victoria's cast-offs, the wrong shade but close enough. Eyeliner that had probably expired 2 years ago. Lipstick in a dusty rose that was too pale for her skin tone but would have to do. The dress fit better than she'd expected. Still a little long, dragging slightly on the floor, but she stuffed tissue into the toes of the matching heels, and that helped. She twisted her hair up in something approximating an elegant style, using approximately 200 bobby pins to keep it in place. At 5:45, she looked in the age-spotted mirror in her tiny room and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like a bride. She looked like a lie. A knock on the door. Car's here, Victoria called through the wood. Claire took a breath. Another. Then she opened the door. Victoria actually gasped. You look like Madeline? Like a miracle. Victoria's eyes were bright, almost feverish. Remember, You're excited. You're willing. No matter what happens, you smile and agree. Understand? Claire didn't answer. She just gathered her skirts and headed for the stairs. The car waiting in his driveway was black and sleek and probably cost more than the house. The driver stood by the rear door, his face expressionless, his suit perfectly tailored. He opened the door without a word. Claire slid into the back seat. The door closed with a heavy thunk that sounded final. The drive took 20 minutes but felt like both seconds and hours. Claire watched the city slide past the tinted windows, familiar streets suddenly looking foreign, like she was seeing them for the last time. They headed downtown toward the financial district where the old money and the new money and the dirty money all mixed together in expensive restaurants and private clubs. The cathedral rose up between skyscrapers, gothic and brooding, a relic from another era that had somehow survived. The car pulled around to a side entrance. The driver opened Claire's door and gestured for her to follow. Inside, the cathedral was dim and cool, candles flickering in alcoves. The driver led her down a long corridor, their footsteps echoing on stone floors, until he stopped at a heavy wooden door. "Wait here. Someone will come for you." Then he was gone. Claire tried the handle. Locked, of course. The room was small, a mirror, a sofa, a table with a water pitcher, one high window showing a slice of darkening sky. Claire sat on the sofa and waited. 7 o'clock came and went. 7:15. At 7:20, the lock clicked. A woman in her 50s entered. Elegant, severe, her silver hair swept back in a tight bun. She looked Claire up and down with the assessing gaze of someone who'd spent a lifetime evaluating people. "You ready?" Claire stood. "Yes." "This way." More corridors, more stone. Until they reached a small antechamber, and through the partially open door, Claire could see the cathedral's interior. Rows of dark pews, mostly empty. And at the far end, backlit by candles, a figure in a wheelchair. The woman handed Claire a bouquet, white roses and trailing ivy. "When the music starts, you walk, smooth and steady, eyes forward. Don't look terrified." "What if I am terrified?" The woman's expression didn't change. "Then lie better." She disappeared. The organ music started, something classical and heavy that made Claire's chest tighten. The doors swung open. This was it. The last moment she could still run, could drop everything and sprint for the exit and never look back. But she thought of Victoria's face, thought of the men in dark suits with their cold eyes, thought of Madeline somewhere on the road to Mexico with a boy who probably couldn't protect her from anything. Claire thought of her father, of the man who'd loved her and left her alone in a world full of wolves. "I'm sorry, Dad." Then she stepped through the doors. The cathedral was vast and cold and echoing. The few people in the pews, maybe 6 men in dark suits, didn't turn to look at her. They stared straight ahead like this was the most boring transaction they'd ever witnessed. Maybe it was. Claire kept her eyes forward, smooth and steady, one foot in front of the other. The man in the wheelchair came into focus slowly. From a distance, he'd been just a shadow. Up close, Claire could see details. Broad shoulders under an expensive black suit, dark hair, styled perfectly. Hands folded in his lap with absolute stillness. She still couldn't see his face. The candlelight played tricks. 20 feet, 15, 10. And then Claire was at the altar, and she could finally see Adrian Kane's face, and her breath caught because he was young, maybe 30. Sharp features and dark eyes that took in everything about her in a single glance. Not cruel-looking, not obviously dangerous, just focused, intelligent, like he was solving a puzzle. He looked at her the way you'd look at an interesting problem. "Madeline Hastings," he said, his voice low and smooth with just a trace of amusement. Claire's mind went blank. The priest cleared his throat, an old man with rheumy eyes and vestments that hung on his thin frame. "Shall we begin?" Adrian's gaze never left Claire's face. "Let's get this over with." The ceremony was brutal in its brevity. The priest rattled through the traditional words at double speed, like he wanted to be anywhere but here. Claire heard herself respond, "I do. I will," her voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. Adrian's responses were crisp, clear, no hesitation. When it came time for the ring, one of the men from the pews approached with a small box. Adrian opened it without looking, pulled out a ring that flashed gold and diamond in the candlelight, and held out his hand. Claire gave him her hand. His fingers were warm as they closed around hers, gentle, even as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, which shouldn't have been possible unless he'd known, unless he'd planned for this exact moment, this exact hand. The thought sent ice down her spine. You may kiss the bride. Claire's eyes snapped to Adrian's face. He was watching her with that same assessing look, waiting to see what she would do. Then he leaned forward slightly and pressed a kiss to her knuckles instead, his eyes never leaving hers. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Kane," he murmured. The priest cleared his throat. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Done. 15 minutes, start to finish. One of the men approached with the marriage certificate. Adrian signed it with a fountain pen, his signature bold and confident. Then he held the pen out to Claire. She stared down at the line marked bride's signature. Last chance to tell the truth. Last chance to say, "I'm not Madeline, this is all a lie." She signed Madeline's name. Her hand remembered the loops and curves from forging permission slips years ago. The signature looked convincing enough. The priest took the document without a word, his expression sour, and shuffled off toward the back of the cathedral. "Shall we?" Adrian gestured toward the side exit. Claire found her voice. "That's it? No reception? No?" "I don't like crowds." He turned his wheelchair with practiced ease. "The car is waiting." Claire gathered her skirts and followed, her mind racing. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. The ceremony had been too fast, too simple. Adrian had barely looked at her, and now he was just leaving? Taking her where? They emerged into cool evening air. The same black car waited at the curb, but this time a different man stood by the door, younger, blonde, with an easy smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Congratulations, boss." "Marcus," Adrian nodded. "Help my wife into the car." My wife. The words sounded emotionless, transactional. Marcus offered Claire his hand. She took it and climbed into the back seat, the dress pooling around her like sea foam. Adrian's wheelchair folded with mechanical precision, and Marcus lifted him into the seat beside Claire with practiced efficiency. The door closed. The car pulled away from the cathedral. Silence stretched between them. Claire could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of the ring on her finger like a shackle. Finally, Adrian spoke. "You're not Madeline." Claire's heart stopped. She turned to look at him, her mind scrambling for denial, for explanation, for anything. But Adrian was watching her with something that might have been amusement playing around his mouth. "Relax," he said. "I'm not angry. I don't know what you—" The photograph I was shown had a woman with a mole on her left cheek. You don't have one. His gaze traveled over her face with clinical precision. "You're also 2 inches shorter, and your eyes are a different shade of brown. Should I continue?" Claire couldn't breathe. "Then why did I let you walk down that aisle and legally bind yourself to me?" Adrian leaned back against the seat, perfectly relaxed. "Because I wanted to see what you would do, how far you would go. This isn't a game. Everything is a game, Mrs. Kane. The question is whether you know the rules." He tilted his head, studying her. "So let's start simple. What's your real name?" Claire's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her lap. Claire Hastings. The daughter, not the stepdaughter. Interesting." Adrian drummed his fingers once against the armrest. "Let me guess. Madeline ran, got cold feet, and Victoria, desperate to save herself, threw you to the wolves instead." "Something like that." "And you just agreed? Put on a wedding dress and married a complete stranger because your stepmother asked you to?" He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That's either remarkably selfless or remarkably stupid. Maybe it's both. Maybe it is." The car turned onto a private drive. Through the windshield, Claire could see a building rising into the night, all glass and steel, easily 40 stories tall. "Tell me, Claire, do you know who I am? What I do?" "Victoria said you own half the city." "3/4, actually. And what I don't own, I control." He said it matter-of-factly, the way someone might mention the weather. "I run the largest criminal organization on the eastern seaboard. Gambling, smuggling, protection. If there's money in it, I have my hand in it." I've killed men, ordered deaths, destroyed families. He turned to look at her directly. Does that frighten you? Claire met his eyes. Should it? Something flickered across Adrian's face. Surprise, maybe, or respect? Most people would say yes. Most people didn't just sign away their entire future to a stranger. Fair point. The car pulled into an underground garage, smooth and expertly paved. We're home. Home. Your new home anyway. Top floor, penthouse, best view in the city. He paused. What did Victoria promise you? To get you to agree to this? Money, freedom, the truth about my father's debts. And you believed her? No, but I was out of options. Adrian laughed, a real laugh this time, low and genuinely amused. At least you're honest about it. That's refreshing. The car stopped, and Marcus appeared to open the door. Come on, Mrs. Kane. Let's see if you survived the night. The elevator required a key card to access the top floor. The doors opened directly into the penthouse, and Claire stepped out into a space that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing the city spread out below. Modern furniture in blacks and grays and chrome. Art on the walls that was probably worth more than the Whitmore estate. Marcus wheeled Adrian inside, then disappeared back into the elevator without a word. The doors closed. Claire and Adrian were alone. Bedroom's down that hall, Adrian said, gesturing. Ensuite bathroom. Walk-in closet. Already stocked with clothes in your size. Claire turned to stare at him. How did you... Know your size? I didn't. I had them stock every size from 0 to 14. Consider it an educated guess. He moved toward the windows, his wheelchair silent on the hardwood floors. You'll find everything you need. Toiletries, makeup, jewelry. I'm told women appreciate such things. You're being very calm about this. Should I be angry? Throw things? Threaten you? He glanced back at her. What would be the point? We're married now, legally bound, whether you're Madeline or Claire or anyone else is irrelevant. Your men said, my men say a lot of things. Most of it is theater designed to scare people into compliance. Adrian turned his wheelchair to face her fully. The debt was real. Your father did borrow a substantial amount of money from my organization, and he did fail to pay it back before he died. But I didn't need a marriage to collect that debt, Claire. I could have simply taken everything, the house, the business holdings, whatever was left. Could have sent Victoria and Madeline to debtor's prison if I really wanted to push it. Then why? Because I wanted something else. His eyes were dark and unreadable in the dim light. A wife from a respectable family, someone who could stand beside me in public, attend charity galas, smile for photographers, someone who understood that this was a business arrangement, nothing more. He paused. Madeline would have been fine. But you? You might be even better. I don't understand. You will. Adrian moved toward the hallway. It's late. You should rest. We'll talk more in the morning. Wait. Claire didn't move. What happens now? What do you expect from me? Adrian stopped, his back to her. Honestly, I'm not sure yet. I wasn't expecting you, Claire Hastings. I wasn't expecting someone who'd walk into a trap with her eyes wide open and her spine intact. He glanced back over his shoulder. But I'm starting to think you might be exactly what I need. He disappeared down the hall. Claire stood alone in the massive living room, the city lights twinkling below, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. She'd married a crime lord. She'd lied her way into a legal contract with one of the most dangerous men in the city, and he didn't seem to care. Claire moved to the windows, looking out at the sprawling cityscape. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably celebrating, thinking she'd won, thinking she'd successfully sacrificed Claire to save herself. And maybe she had, or maybe... Claire touched the ring on her finger, heavy and cold and binding. Maybe she'd just walked into something far more complicated than any of them had imagined. The bedroom Adrian had indicated was larger than Claire's entire third-floor room at the Whitmore estate. King-sized bed with black silk sheets, modern furniture, another wall of windows. The closet was indeed stocked with clothes, everything from casual wear to formal gowns, all with the tags still on. Size 6. Her exact size. Claire stood in the middle of the closet and tried to figure out how Adrian Kane had known that when he'd never met her before tonight. She changed out of the wedding dress carefully, preserving it even though she never wanted to see it again. Found a pair of pajamas that were softer than anything she'd worn in years. Washed her face in the bathroom that had heated floors and a shower with approximately 17 different settings. Then she lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. She should be terrified, should be planning her escape, should be doing anything except lying here like this was normal. But exhaustion was pulling at her, dragging her down, and she hadn't slept more than a few hours in days. Her eyes drifted closed. She was almost asleep when she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Not the soft sound of wheelchair wheels. Footsteps. Claire's eyes snapped open. The footsteps stopped outside her door. Then they moved on, fading down the hallway. Claire sat up slowly, her heart pounding. Adrian had walked past her room. Walked. She thought about the wheelchair, about the way he'd been lifted into the car, about the way he'd moved through the penthouse. She thought about his eyes, sharp and intelligent and far too aware. And she realized, with a cold shock of understanding, that there were layers to this story she hadn't even begun to uncover. Claire lay back down, her mind racing. Tomorrow. She'd figure it out tomorrow. For tonight, she was alive. She was married. She was trapped in a penthouse 40 stories above the city with a man who'd just walked past her door on legs that everyone believed didn't work. For tonight, that would have to be enough. Claire woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the disorienting realization that she had no idea where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The wedding, the cathedral. Adrian Kane's dark eyes watching her sign away her future with someone else's name. The footsteps in the hallway last night. She sat up slowly, her body aching from tension she'd held even in sleep. The clock on the nightstand read 9:47 a.m. She'd slept nearly 12 hours. The apartment was silent. Claire slid out of bed and padded to the door, opening it carefully. The hallway stretched empty in both directions, all sleek lines and expensive art. She moved toward the living room, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. Adrian sat at the dining table with a newspaper and a cup of coffee, still in his wheelchair, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt. He looked up when she entered. "Good morning, Mrs. Kane. Coffee?" Claire stared at him, at the wheelchair, at the man who'd walked past her door last night on two perfectly functional legs. "I heard you," she said. Adrian's expression didn't change. "Heard what?" "Last night, walking." For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he set down his newspaper and folded his hands on the table. "Did you? So it's true. You can walk." "Can I?" Adrian's mouth quirked slightly. "What an interesting accusation to make about your new husband on your first morning together." "I'm not crazy. You heard footsteps in a large apartment in a building with 39 other floors. Could have been anyone." He picked up his coffee cup. "But let's say, hypothetically, that you're right. What would you do with that information?" Claire moved closer to the table. "Why would you pretend to need a wheelchair?" "I asked you a question first." "I don't know. I haven't decided yet." "Honest again. I like that." Adrian gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Have coffee. Let me tell you a story." Claire hesitated, then sat. Adrian poured coffee from a French press into a second cup and pushed it toward her. 5 years ago, he said, I had a business partner. Older man, someone who'd been in the organization since before I was born. He didn't like that I'd taken over when my father died. Thought I was too young, too soft, too concerned with modernizing our operations. Adrian's voice was calm, almost conversational. So he arranged an accident, car bomb, very dramatic. Killed my driver, injured 6 bystanders, and left me with extensive injuries to my spine. Claire's hands tightened around the coffee cup. I spent 3 months in the hospital, 3 months of surgeries and physical therapy, and doctors telling me I'd never walk again. 3 months of watching my enemies circle, waiting to see if I was weak enough to destroy. He took a sip of coffee. And then I realized something. Being in a wheelchair made people underestimate me, made them think I was vulnerable, made them careless. So you recovered, and didn't tell anyone. I recovered enough. The injuries were real. I still have limited mobility in my left leg, chronic pain, occasional problems with balance, but I can walk when I need to, stand when I choose to, fight if it comes to that. Adrian's eyes met hers. The wheelchair is a weapon, Claire. A very effective one. My enemies see a cripple and think I'm no threat. By the time they realize their mistake, it's too late. And no one knows? Marcus knows. My doctor knows. And now you know. He leaned back in his chair. Which brings us back to my original question. What are you going to do with that information? Claire looked at him, really looked at him. At the sharp intelligence in his eyes, the controlled stillness of his posture, the careful way he held himself even now. This was a man who'd turned his greatest weakness into a strategic advantage, who'd let people think he was broken while he planned their destruction. Nothing, she said finally. I'm not going to do anything. Why not? Because you just told me one of your most dangerous secrets. Either you trust me or you're testing me, or you're arrogant enough to think I can't hurt you with it. She set down her coffee cup. None of those options make telling anyone a good idea. Adrian laughed, a real laugh, low and genuinely pleased. Smart and honest. Victoria really did send me the wrong daughter. Victoria didn't send me anywhere. I chose this. Did you? Or did she manipulate you into it? When Claire didn't answer, Adrian nodded. Thought so. Let me guess. She promised you money, freedom, the truth about your father's debts, all the things you've wanted for 3 years but had no way to get. How do you know so much about me? I make it my business to know things. Adrian pulled a folder from beneath his newspaper and slid it across the table. Open it. Claire opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were documents, financial records, legal papers, photographs. She recognized her father's handwriting on some of them, Victoria's signature on others. Your father did gamble, Adrian said quietly. But not the way Victoria told you. Richard Hastings was actually quite good at cards, won more than he lost. The problem was that he won too much from the wrong people. Claire looked up sharply. What? 3 years ago, your father sat down at a private game with some of this city's most powerful men. Politicians, businessmen, a few of my competitors. By the end of the night, he'd won almost $2 million. Adrian tapped the folder. It's all documented. The problem was one of the men he beat was Marcus Volkov. Do you know that name? No. Good, you shouldn't. Volkov runs the Russian syndicate in the Northern Territories. He's also a man who doesn't like to lose, especially not to civilians. Adrian's voice hardened. Volkov decided your father had cheated. Had his men follow Richard home, threaten him, demand the money back plus interest. Your father refused. He hadn't cheated, and he wasn't going to be bullied. Claire felt sick. So they killed him? No, they went after Victoria instead. Adrian pulled out another document, a bank statement. She was having an affair, did you know that? Some investment banker from the financial district. Volkov's people found out, threatened to expose her, ruin her socially. Victoria panicked, went to your father, begged him to give back the money and make it all go away. And he did. He did. Paid back the $2 million plus another $1 million in interest and damages. Wiped out most of his liquid assets to do it. Then he tried to recoup the losses by making some aggressive investments that didn't pan out. That's where the real debt came from. Bad deals made in desperation, trying to rebuild what he'd lost, protecting his wife's reputation. Claire stared at the documents, her vision blurring. The heart attack, stress, anxiety, 3 years of trying to dig himself out of a hole that kept getting deeper. Victoria knew. She watched him destroy himself and never said a word about her part in it. And when he died, she used those debts as an excuse to take everything, claim it was all Richard's fault, turn you into a servant in your own home. Adrian's voice was cold now, hard as stone. Your father wasn't a gambler, Claire. He was a good man who made one mistake, marrying a woman who valued her reputation more than his life. Claire couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The truth was sitting right there in black and white, and it was somehow worse than anything she'd imagined. Why are you telling me this? She managed finally. Because you deserve to know, and because I need you to understand something. Adrian leaned forward. Victoria sent you here thinking you were disposable, thinking I'd either kill you or divorce you or make you disappear. She doesn't care what happens to you as long as her debt is forgiven and she gets to keep living in that house your father paid for. I know that. Do you? Because you're still acting like you owe her something, like this family is worth protecting. Adrian's eyes were intense. They're not, Claire. They never were. Your father's dead? Madeline's in Mexico with her idiot boyfriend, and Victoria's probably already planning how to spend the money she'll make when she sells the Whitmore estate out from under you. She can't do that. The house was my grandfather's, and your father put it in a trust with Victoria as the executor, which means she controls everything until the trust dissolves, which won't happen for another 7 years. Adrian tapped the folder again. It's all in here. Every document, every transaction, every lie she told you. I had my people pull the records. Claire closed the folder with shaking hands. Why would you do this? Go to all this trouble? Because I want you to understand the situation clearly. No illusions, no false hope. Adrian sat back. You're married to me now. Legally, binding, no way out unless I allow it. And I'm offering you a choice. You can play the victim, poor Claire, trapped in a marriage she didn't want, pining for a family that treated her like garbage. Or you can wake up and realize that this might be the best thing that ever happened to you. Best thing? You're a criminal. I'm a businessman who operates outside traditional legal frameworks. There's a difference. Adrian's mouth quirked. And I'm offering you something Victoria never did. Real power, real freedom. The ability to actually control your own life instead of scrubbing floors and hoping for scraps. In exchange for what? In exchange for being my wife. Standing beside me at events, playing the role of Mrs. Adrian Kane when the situation requires it. Keeping my secrets, supporting my work, presenting a united front to the world. He paused. And before you ask, no, I don't expect you to share my bed. This is a business arrangement. You'll have your own room, your own space, your own life within these walls. All I need is your loyalty and your discretion. Claire studied him. That's it? Just show up and look pretty? There's nothing just about it. The people I deal with are dangerous. The events you'll attend will be full of criminals and corrupt politicians and people who would slit your throat for looking at them wrong. You'll need to learn how to navigate that world, how to read people, how to protect yourself. Adrian's expression softened slightly. But I think you can do it. I think you're stronger than you realize. You don't know me. I know you walked into a cathedral and married a stranger to save people who don't deserve saving. I know you've survived 3 years of abuse and neglect, and you're still standing. I know you're smarter than Victoria, braver than Madeline, and more honest than anyone I've worked with in years. He actually stood, rising from the wheelchair with only the slightest hitch in his movement. That's enough for me. Claire's breath caught. Seeing him stand in full daylight was different from hearing footsteps in the dark. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders and a presence that filled the room. The slight limp in his left leg was barely noticeable. So that's my offer, Adrian said, moving toward the windows with careful, measured steps. Stay. Learn. Become someone Victoria can't touch, someone who doesn't need to beg for scraps or sleep in servants' quarters. Or leave. I'll arrange a divorce, give you enough money to start over somewhere else, and you'll never have to see me again. Your choice. Claire sat in silence for a long moment, processing everything. The documents about her father, the revelation about Victoria's affair, the offer Adrian was making. She thought about the Whitmore estate, about the room on the 3rd floor with the water-stained ceiling, about Victoria's cold eyes and Madeline's casual cruelty, about 3 years of being invisible. Then she thought about the ring on her finger, heavy and binding and somehow not as terrible as it should be. I'll stay, she said. Adrian turned from the window. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Claire stood, smoothing down the pajamas she'd borrowed. What happens now? Now we start your education. Adrian moved back to the table, his gait more confident now that the pretense was partially dropped. Marcus will be here in an hour to discuss security protocols. This afternoon, we're meeting with my tailor. You'll need appropriate clothing for the events we'll be attending. Tonight, there's a charity gala at the Meridian. We're expected to make an appearance. Tonight? I just got married yesterday, and the entire city is waiting to see my new wife. We can't disappoint them. Adrian's smile was sharp. Welcome to your new life, Claire. Hope you're ready. Marcus arrived exactly an hour later, looking far too cheerful for someone discussing security protocols. He was younger than Claire had realized, maybe 28, with blonde hair and blue eyes, and the kind of easy charm that probably got him out of a lot of trouble. Mrs. Kane, he said, shaking her hand with genuine warmth. Pleasure to officially meet you. Sorry about the rushed wedding. Boss doesn't like to waste time. So I've noticed. They sat in the living room while Marcus pulled out a tablet and started going through what he called basic safety measures. Claire learned about the building's security system, the panic buttons hidden throughout the penthouse, the list of people who were allowed access to this floor, Marcus, Adrian's doctor, and exactly 2 cleaning staff who'd been thoroughly vetted. You'll have a security detail whenever you leave the building, Marcus said. At least 2 people, more if we're going somewhere high risk. I need bodyguards. You're married to Adrian Kane, that makes you a target. Marcus's expression turned serious. Most people will leave you alone out of respect for the boss, but there are always opportunists, people who think kidnapping you would give them leverage. We're not taking chances. Claire felt the walls of her new life closing in. I can't even go to the grocery store alone? You won't be going to grocery stores, period. We have people for that. Marcus must have seen something in her face because his expression softened. I know it sounds restrictive, but give it time. You'll adjust. After Marcus left, a woman named Elena arrived, Adrian's personal stylist, apparently. She was in her 40s with impeccable taste and the kind of critical eye that made Claire feel instantly self-conscious. Height 5'6", yes? Size 6. Elena circled Claire like a predator. Good bone structure. Skin needs work. Too pale, probably from lack of sun. Hair has potential but needs professional attention. She pulled out her phone and started typing. I'll schedule you with Andre for hair, Sophia for makeup, and we'll need a full wardrobe consultation. What are you wearing tonight? I haven't. Never mind. I'll send options. Elena headed for the door, still typing. Be ready by 6. Andre will arrive at 3 to start on your hair. The door closed behind her. Claire stood alone in the living room and tried to process the fact that her entire existence had just been reorganized by a woman she'd met 5 minutes ago. She's efficient, Adrian said from the doorway. He'd changed into a suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, making him look every inch the dangerous businessman he claimed to be. And expensive, but worth it. This is insane. This is necessary. You can't show up to these events looking like… He stopped himself. Like what? Like a servant? Like someone who isn't good enough for you? Like someone who's scared. Adrian moved into the room, his steps careful but steady. These people are sharks, Claire. They can smell fear and weakness, and they'll use it against you, against me. You need to look like you belong at my side. Like you chose this, like you're exactly where you want to be. Even though I'm not. Especially because you're not. He stopped a few feet away from her. Fake it until it becomes real. That's the secret to surviving in this world. Claire looked at him, at the expensive suit, the controlled posture, the calculated expression. Is that what you do? Fake it? Every single day? Adrian's smile was cold. The wheelchair, the calm demeanor, the reasonable businessman act. It's all performance. Underneath, I'm just as ruthless and damaged as everyone expects me to be. I've just learned to package it better. That's depressing. That's reality. He checked his watch. I have meetings until 4. Try to eat something. There's food in the kitchen. Elena's team will start arriving at 3. Don't let them intimidate you. Easy for you to say. No, it's not. Adrian's expression shifted, just for a moment, and Claire caught a glimpse of something raw underneath. I was 25 when my father died, and I inherited this life. Spent the first year terrified I'd screw everything up and get us all killed. But I learned. You will too. Then he was gone, disappearing into a home office that Claire hadn't even noticed existed, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the growing realization that she'd traded one prison for another, just a more expensive one. The afternoon passed in a blur of people and products and transformations. Andre turned out to be a tiny Frenchman with genius hands who took one look at Claire's hair and made a sound of profound distress. 3 hours later, her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. The mousy brown transformed into something richer with subtle highlights she didn't remember agreeing to. Sophia did her makeup with the precision of a surgeon, explaining each step in a thick Eastern European accent. You have good features, but you hide them. No more hiding. We bring you forward. When they finally finished and let Claire look in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back looked polished, sophisticated, like someone who belonged in a penthouse 40 stories above the city. Like someone who could stand beside Adrian Kane and not look ridiculous. Elena returned at 5:30 with 3 garment bags. Try these, one of them will work. All 3 dresses were stunning, a navy silk that hugged every curve, a burgundy velvet with a plunging neckline, and a black lace that managed to be both elegant and dangerous. Claire chose the black lace because it felt like armor. Good choice, Elena said, nodding approval. Shows you have taste. Shoes are in the box, jewelry in the case. Don't wear too much. You want to look expensive, not desperate. By 6:15, Claire was ready. The dress fit perfectly. The shoes were surprisingly comfortable, and the delicate diamond necklace Elena had provided caught the light when she moved. She looked like a different person. She felt like a fraud. Adrian was waiting in the living room, back in his wheelchair, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than a car. He looked up when she entered, and something flashed across his face too quickly to identify. You clean up well, Mrs. Kane. So do you. Let's go convince the world we're madly in love. He moved toward the elevator. And Claire? Try to smile. You look like you're going to your own execution. The Meridian Hotel was exactly the kind of place Claire had only seen in magazines. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, servers in white gloves circulating with champagne. The ballroom was already filled with people when they arrived, all of them dressed like they'd stepped out of a fashion shoot. Marcus wheeled Adrian through the crowd, and Claire followed, acutely aware of the eyes following them. People whispered behind their hands, their gazes sharp and assessing. Ignore them, Adrian murmured. They're just curious, jealous probably. You look stunning. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Don't. It'll ruin the dress. He gestured to Marcus, who stepped away to give them space. Just stay close to me and follow my lead. I'll handle the conversations. The next hour was a masterclass in Adrian's public persona. He was charming, gracious, quick with a joke or a compliment. People approached them constantly. Businessmen wanting to discuss deals, politicians making small talk, society wives offering thinly veiled curiosity about the new Mrs. Kane. How did you two meet? One woman asked, her smile sharp as knives. Through family, Adrian said smoothly, his hand finding Claire's and squeezing gently. Claire's father and mine were business associates. We reconnected after I took over the company, and he looked at Claire with something that almost seemed like genuine warmth. Well, some things are inevitable. Claire forced a smile. He's very persuasive. I can imagine. The woman's gaze raked over Claire, cataloging every detail. That's a beautiful dress. Whose design? Claire had no idea. A gift from my husband. How thoughtful. The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. Welcome to the family, dear. She drifted away, and Claire let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. You did well, Adrian said quietly. She's one of the worst gossips in the city. By tomorrow, everyone will know you're beautiful, gracious, and completely devoted to me. I'm none of those things. You're the first two, and you're convincingly faking the third. That's enough. He nodded toward a man approaching from the left, older, silver-haired, with cold eyes and a politician's smile. Senator Reeves. Be careful with him. He's sharper than he looks. The senator greeted them with the kind of warmth that felt calculated. Adrian, my boy, congratulations on your marriage. I had no idea you were even seeing anyone. We kept it quiet, Adrian said. Senator, this is my wife, Claire. Claire, Senator Reeves chairs the Appropriations Committee. Claire shook his hand, noting the way his grip lingered slightly too long. Pleasure to meet you, Senator. The pleasure is entirely mine. Adrian's a lucky man. Reeves's gaze flicked to Adrian. We should talk soon about that zoning issue we discussed. Call my office Monday. We'll set something up. The senator nodded and moved on, and Claire saw the calculation in Adrian's eyes as he watched him go. What zoning issue? Nothing you need to worry about. Adrian's attention shifted to someone across the room. Smile, Victoria just walked in. Claire's blood went cold. She turned slowly, her eyes scanning the crowd until she found her stepmother near the entrance, wearing a silver gown that probably cost a fortune. Madeline wasn't with her, still in Mexico, presumably, but Victoria's date was a man Claire didn't recognize. Older, distinguished, clearly wealthy. Victoria's gaze swept the room and landed on Claire. Her eyes widened, her mouth falling open in shock. She didn't expect to see you here, Adrian murmured. Didn't expect you to survive the wedding night, probably. Look at her face. That's pure panic. Claire watched as Victoria's shock transformed into something harder. The older woman whispered something to her date, then started moving through the crowd toward them. "Here we go," Adrian said. "Remember, you're happy. You're exactly where you want to be. Don't give her the satisfaction of seeing you scared." Victoria arrived with her practiced smile firmly in place, but Claire could see the tension around her eyes. "Claire, what a surprise." "Hello, Victoria. I didn't realize you'd be here. I thought—" She stopped herself, her gaze shifting to Adrian. "Mr. Kane, thank you for being so understanding about the confusion yesterday." Confusion? Adrian's voice was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. "I'm not sure I'd call it that. Your daughter ran away rather than honor her family's commitment. Fortunate that Claire was willing to step in." Victoria's smile tightened. "Yes, very fortunate." She looked back at Claire, and there was venom in her eyes now. "You look different. I feel different. I'm sure you do." Victoria's voice dropped, low enough that only Claire and Adrian could hear. "We need to talk privately about our arrangement." "What arrangement?" Claire kept her voice steady. "Don't play games with me. You know what I promised you. The documents, the truth about your father's estate." "Oh, that arrangement." Claire glanced at Adrian, who nodded slightly. "Actually, I don't think we need to talk about that at all." Victoria's face paled. "What?" "I already have the truth. About Dad's gambling, about Volkov, about your affair, about how you let him destroy himself to protect your reputation." Claire stepped closer, her voice hard. "I know everything, Victoria. Every lie you told, every piece of manipulation. So no, I don't need anything from you. Not anymore." "You little—" Victoria caught herself, aware of the people around them. "You have no idea what you're doing. Adrian Kane is using you. The way you used me for 3 years?" Claire's laugh was sharp. "At least he's honest about it." Victoria's date appeared at her elbow, looking concerned. "Everything all right, darling?" "Fine." Victoria's voice was tight. "We were just leaving." She leaned in close to Claire, her whisper venomous. "This isn't over. You think you've won something, but you're still the same pathetic girl scrubbing floors. A pretty dress doesn't change that." "Maybe not," Claire said. "But it's a start." Victoria swept away, her date trailing behind her, and Claire felt her hand shaking with adrenaline. "Breathe," Adrian said quietly. "You did perfectly." "I think I'm going to be sick." "Not here. Wait until we get home." He gestured to Marcus, who appeared immediately. "We're leaving. Get the car." The ride back to the penthouse was silent. Claire stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past, trying to process what had just happened. She'd stood up to Victoria, had thrown the truth in her face, had chosen Adrian's world over the one she'd known her entire life. There was no going back now. Back in the penthouse, Claire kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the sofa. Adrian remained in his wheelchair, watching her with that same assessing look. "How do you feel?" "Terrified. Exhausted. Weirdly exhilarated." "That's adrenaline. It'll fade." He moved closer. "But you should be proud. You faced down the woman who's tormented you for years and didn't back down. That takes strength. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing." Adrian's expression softened slightly. "You did well tonight, Claire. Better than I expected, honestly. You might actually be good at this." "At what? Playing dress-up and lying to rich people?" "At surviving." He turned his wheelchair toward the hallway. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start teaching you how to actually fight back." Claire watched him go, then looked down at her hands. The ring caught the light, gold and diamonds and binding promises. 3 days ago, she'd been scrubbing floors in the Whitmore estate. Tonight, she'd faced down her stepmother at a charity gala while wearing a dress that cost more than she used to make in a year. Her entire life had changed. The question was whether she'd changed enough to handle it. The next morning, Claire woke to find a stranger in her bedroom. She sat up with a gasp, her heart hammering, until the woman turned from the closet and raised her hands in a placating gesture. Sorry. Mr. Kane said you'd be startled. I'm Rosa. I work for him. He asked me to help you get ready." Claire pressed a hand to her chest, trying to slow her racing pulse. "Ready for what?" "Training. He said to tell you to wear something comfortable. I brought options." Rosa gestured to the bed where she'd laid out athletic wear in various sizes. He's waiting in the gym when you're ready. The gym turned out to be on the 39th floor, accessible by a private elevator that required Adrian's keycard. Claire stepped out into a space that looked like something from a high-end fitness magazine. Weights, machines, a boxing ring in the corner, floor-to-ceiling mirrors along one wall. Adrian stood near the boxing ring, wearing track pants and a fitted black t-shirt. No wheelchair in sight. He was stretching, his movements controlled and precise, and Claire could see the definition in his arms, the strength in his shoulders. "Good," he said when he saw her. "You're on time. Come here." Claire approached cautiously. "What is this?" "Self-defense training. If you're going to be in my world, you need to know how to protect yourself." He gestured to the boxing ring. "Marcus will be here in 20 minutes to start the actual lessons. I wanted to talk to you first." "About what?" Adrian's expression turned serious. "Last night, you stood up to Victoria. That was good. But it also put a target on your back. She's not going to let that humiliation go unanswered. She can't do anything. I don't live there anymore. She can do plenty. Spread rumors, poison your reputation, make your life difficult in 100 small ways." Adrian moved closer. "And she will, because that's who she is. So you need to be prepared, mentally, physically, strategically. Hence the boxing ring. Hence everything." Adrian's gaze was intense. "I told you I'd teach you how power works. That starts with understanding that violence is always an option. Not the first option, not the best option, but always available. The people we deal with respect strength. If they think you're weak, they'll use it against you." A chill ran down Claire's spine. "Are you saying someone might actually try to hurt me?" "I'm saying that in 3 weeks, there's a major charity auction. All the major players will be there. My allies, my rivals, politicians, businessmen, everyone who matters in this city. They'll all want to meet you, size you up, figure out if you're a weakness they can exploit." His voice softened slightly. "I want you to walk into that room knowing you can handle whatever they throw at you." Marcus arrived right on schedule, along with a woman Claire didn't recognize, tall, muscular, with scarred knuckles and assessing eyes. "Claire, this is Natasha, former Olympic boxer, current head of my personal security team. She's going to teach you how to throw a punch without breaking your thumb." The next 2 hours were brutal. Natasha put Claire through basic drills, stance, footwork, how to make a proper fist. Claire's shoulders burned, her knees ached, and she was pretty sure she'd pulled something in her back. "Again," Natasha said, unmoved by Claire's obvious exhaustion. "You're dropping your guard. Someone comes at you like that, you're done." Claire raised her hands again, threw another punch at the bag. Her form was better this time. She could feel it. "Better." Natasha circled her like a predator. "But you're still thinking too much. Fighting isn't about thinking. It's about reacting. Muscle memory. We'll work on that." By the time they finished, Claire could barely lift her arms. She collapsed against the wall, sweat dripping down her face, her whole body trembling. Adrian rolled over in his wheelchair. He'd switched back to it when Marcus arrived. "How'd she do?" "She's got potential," Natasha said, which seemed to be high praise from her. "Needs work on her confidence, but the basics are there. Give me a month, she'll be dangerous." 3 weeks, that's all we have." Natasha shrugged. "Then we work harder." Over the following days, Claire's new routine took shape. Mornings were for physical training, boxing with Natasha, self-defense with Marcus, occasionally weapons training that made Claire's hands shake. Afternoons were for other lessons. Elena taught her about fashion, about reading people through their clothing choices, about the subtle messages sent by jewelry and hemlines. A woman named Catherine, stern, British, unimpressed by everything, taught her etiquette, proper forms of address, how to navigate a 12-course meal without looking lost. "You're not just learning to survive," Catherine said during one particularly tedious lesson about wine pairings. "You're learning to belong. There's a difference." Evenings were for events. Adrian took her to dinners, gallery openings, private clubs where cigars cost more than Claire used to make in a week. Each time, she performed her role a little better, smiled at the right moments, asked intelligent questions, deflected invasive curiosity with practiced grace. And each night, after the events ended and they returned to the penthouse, Adrian would debrief her, point out what she'd done well, where she'd stumbled, which people to trust and which to avoid. "Senator Reeves asked about your family tonight," he said one evening, loosening his tie as they rode the elevator up. What did you tell him? That my father passed away 3 years ago and I'm an only child. Nothing about Victoria or Madeline. Good. The less they know about your past, the better. As far as anyone's concerned, you came from a respectable but quiet family, and we met through mutual business connections. Adrian paused. Did he ask anything else? He wanted to know if I was interested in charity work, that his wife runs a foundation for underprivileged children. What did you say? That I'd love to learn more. Claire glanced at him. Was that right? Perfect. Margaret Reeves is one of the most influential women in the city. If she takes you under her wing, it'll open a lot of doors. Adrian's expression shifted, something almost like pride flickering across his face. You're getting better at this, or better at faking it. Same thing. 2 weeks into her new life, Claire stood in front of the bathroom mirror and barely recognized herself. The scared girl who'd scrubbed floors was gone. In her place was someone who looked like she belonged in this world. Hair always perfect, makeup subtle but effective, clothes that whispered expensive rather than shouting it. But inside, Claire still felt like a fraud. She was thinking about this when her phone rang. A new phone Adrian had given her, top of the line, with security features she didn't fully understand. The screen showed an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered, Claire. Victoria's voice was sharp, angry. We need to talk. Claire's stomach clenched. I have nothing to say to you. Then listen. Madeline's back. She's at the house, and she's not doing well. Something in Victoria's tone made Claire pause. What do you mean, not doing well? Derek left her, took her money, and disappeared somewhere in Tijuana. She made it back across the border yesterday, but Victoria's voice cracked just slightly. She won't leave her room, won't eat. I need you to come talk to her. Why would I do that? Because despite everything, you two grew up together. Because she's scared and hurt and asking for you. A pause. Please, Claire. I know I don't deserve to ask, but I'm asking anyway. Claire should say no, should hang up and never think about this again. Madeline had never been kind to her, had participated in every humiliation Victoria had orchestrated. But she heard herself saying, I'll come by this afternoon. Adrian wasn't happy about it. It's a trap, he said flatly when she told him. Victoria wants something. Probably. But if Madeline really is hurt, then she can deal with it the way you dealt with 3 years of abuse, alone. Adrian's expression was hard. You don't owe them anything, Claire. Not sympathy, not time, not a second thought. I know that, but I need to see for myself. Claire met his eyes. I need to close this door properly. Can you understand that? Adrian studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Fine. But Marcus goes with you, and you're back here by 5, non-negotiable. The Whitmore estate looked different to Claire now. Smaller, somehow. Shabbier. The grandeur she'd grown up with seemed faded, the marble less impressive, the architecture less imposing. Or maybe she'd just changed enough to see it clearly. Marcus waited in the car while Claire walked to the front door. She didn't knock, just used her old key, which surprisingly still worked. Victoria appeared in the foyer immediately, as if she'd been waiting. She looked older than Claire remembered, new lines around her eyes and mouth. Thank you for coming. Victoria's voice was subdued, missing its usual sharp edge. She's upstairs, in her room. Claire climbed the familiar staircase, her hand trailing along the banister she'd polished 100 times. Madeline's door was closed. Claire knocked softly. Go away, Mother. It's not Mother, it's Claire. Silence. Then, come in. Madeline sat on her bed, surrounded by used tissues, her eyes red and swollen. She looked terrible, hair unwashed, face blotchy, wearing pajamas that had clearly been slept in for days. When she saw Claire, something complicated passed across her face. You look good, Madeline said finally. Really good. That dress probably cost more than our car. Claire looked down at the simple but elegant outfit Elena had picked out. Probably. So it worked out for you, the marriage. Madeline laughed, the sound bitter. Of course it did. You always land on your feet. Do I? Claire moved into the room, perching on the edge of the vanity chair. Because 3 weeks ago, I was scrubbing your bathroom floor, And now you're married to one of the richest men in the city. Like I said, lucky. Claire studied her stepsister. Madeline looked broken in a way Claire understood too well. What happened with Derek? What do you think happened? He took the money Mother gave me for the trip and left me in some shitty motel outside Tijuana. Didn't even leave a note. Just gone. Madeline's voice cracked. I had to call Mother to wire me money to get home. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? Actually, yes, I do. Madeline flinched. Right, of course you do. She grabbed another tissue. Mother said you confronted her at some gala. Told her you knew everything about Dad's debts. I did. Is it true? About her affair? About Volkov? All of it. Madeline was quiet for a long moment. She lied to me too, you know. Told me Dad was a gambler, that he'd destroyed everything. I believed her. Helped her make you into... She stopped. I'm sorry, for what that's worth. I should have questioned it. Should have stood up for you. Claire wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the 3 years of resentment and humiliation. But looking at Madeline now, broken and abandoned, and finally seeing clearly, she found the anger harder to maintain. Why did you really run? Claire asked quietly. The truth. Because I was terrified. Madeline's laugh was hollow. Mother kept telling me it would be fine, that Adrian Kane would treat me well, that I was lucky. But I heard the things people said about him, about what he does to people who cross him, and I thought... She met Claire's eyes. I thought I'd rather take my chances with Derek than marry someone who might kill me if I looked at him wrong. He's not like that, isn't he? Claire thought about Adrian's carefully controlled violence, his strategic manipulation, the way he moved through the world like a predator in human skin. He's complicated, but he's not a monster. You sound like you actually care about him. Did she? Claire wasn't sure. Adrian was her jailer and her savior, her husband and her employer, her enemy and her only ally. Whatever she felt for him was too tangled to name. I care about surviving, Claire said finally. And right now, he's my best chance at that. Madeline nodded slowly. I get that. More than you know. She twisted the blanket in her hands. Are you happy? Such a simple question, such an impossible answer. I'm not unhappy, Claire said. That's more than I had before. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Two women who'd grown up in the same house but lived completely different lives, finally seeing each other clearly. I should go, Claire said, standing. My security detail is waiting. Security detail, listen to you. But Madeline's smile was sad, not mocking. Will you come back to visit? Claire paused at the door. I don't know. Maybe. If you want me to. I think I do. Is that weird? Everything about our family is weird. Claire opened the door, then looked back. Take care of yourself, Madeline, and maybe think about getting away from Mother before she uses you for something else. Downstairs, Victoria waited in the foyer, her arms crossed. Well? She'll be fine. Eventually. Claire moved toward the door, but Victoria's voice stopped her. Wait. Please. Claire turned slowly. Victoria looked smaller somehow, diminished. I know you hate me, Victoria said quietly. You have every right to. I made choices, terrible choices, and you paid the price. I told myself it was necessary, that I was protecting Madeline, protecting our future. But the truth is I was protecting myself. She took a shaky breath. Your father loved you so much, Claire. Even at the end, when everything was falling apart, he'd talk about you, about how proud he was, how you were going to do great things. Claire's throat tightened. Don't. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know. Victoria's voice cracked. I'm glad you got out. I'm glad you found something better, even if it means you'll never forgive me. Claire stood there, emotions warring inside her. Part of her wanted to scream, to rage, to make Victoria feel every bit of pain she'd inflicted. But another part, the part that was learning to survive in Adrian's world, understood that revenge wouldn't change anything. Victoria would always be who she was, broken and selfish and trapped by her own choices. I'm not sure I'll ever forgive you, Claire said finally. But maybe someday I'll stop caring enough to be angry. That's the best I can offer. She left without looking back. In the car, Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You okay? I will be. Claire watched the Whitmore estate disappear behind them. Take me home. Home. When had she started thinking of the penthouse as home? That evening, Adrian found her on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. He'd abandoned the wheelchair again, standing beside her with his hands in his pockets. How'd it go? Complicated. Claire didn't look at him. Madeline's a mess. Victoria's having some kind of crisis of conscience. And I'm apparently capable of pity for people who don't deserve it. That's not weakness, you know. The pity. Feels like it. It's not. Adrian moved closer, his shoulder almost touching hers. Weakness would be going back. Letting them manipulate you again. Pity from a distance? That's just being human. Claire finally looked at him. Is that what you are? Human? Adrian's laugh was short and sharp. Debatable, but I'm trying to be. He was quiet for a moment. The charity auction is this Friday. Are you ready? Probably not, but I'll be there anyway. That's the spirit. Adrian's expression shifted, becoming more serious. There's something else. I've been watching the security footage from the building. Someone's been asking questions about you, about your background, your family, where you came from. Claire's stomach dropped. Who? Not sure yet. They're being careful, but I wanted you to be aware, in case something happens at the auction. What kind of something? The kind where someone tries to use your past against us, against me. Adrian met her eyes. The wheelchair revelation, the real one, is going to come out soon. I've decided to control the narrative. At the auction, I'm going to stand, in front of everyone, and I want you beside me when I do it. Claire's breath caught. Adrian, I know it's a lot to ask, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Trust him. The man who'd married her under false pretenses, who'd kept massive secrets, who dealt in violence and manipulation as easily as other people breathed. The man who'd also given her truth, protection, and the first real choice she'd had in 3 years. Yes, Claire said. I can do that. Adrian's smile was genuine this time, reaching his eyes. Good, because we're about to shake up this entire city, and I want them to see that we're doing it together. The next few days passed in a blur of final preparations. Natasha put Claire through increasingly intense training sessions. Elena brought an entirely new wardrobe, including the dress for the auction, a midnight blue silk that looked like liquid starlight. Catherine drilled her on names and faces until Claire could identify every major player in the city by sight. And through it all, Adrian was there, teaching her, pushing her, preparing her for what was coming. Thursday night, the night before the auction, Claire couldn't sleep. She found Adrian in his office, working late as usual, the wheelchair conspicuously absent. Can't sleep? He asked without looking up from his computer. Too nervous. Claire moved into the room, settling into the chair across from his desk. What if I screw this up? What if I say the wrong thing, or you won't? Adrian finally looked at her. You've survived everything Victoria threw at you. You've learned to fight, to read people, to play the game. Tomorrow's just another performance. This feels different. It is different. Tomorrow, we stop hiding. We show them who we really are. Adrian leaned back in his chair. Scared? Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He studied her face. You've changed, you know, since that first night. You move differently, talk differently. You look people in the eye now. Claire hadn't noticed, but he was right. Somewhere in the past 3 weeks, something fundamental had shifted. The girl who'd scrubbed floors and accepted every humiliation was gone. In her place was someone harder, stronger, someone who might actually survive this world. Thank you, she said quietly, for pushing me, for seeing something in me worth developing. Adrian's expression softened. I didn't develop anything. I just gave you room to become who you already were. He paused. Get some rest, Claire. Tomorrow's going to be intense. Claire stood to leave, but stopped at the door. Adrian, what happens after tomorrow? After you reveal everything? I don't know. That depends on how people react. His smile was sharp. But whatever happens, we face it together. That's what partners do. Partners. Not husband and wife, not boss and employee. Partners. Claire carried that word with her as she finally went to bed, letting it settle into her bones alongside everything else she'd learned. Tomorrow, they would step into the light together. Tomorrow, the real game would begin, and Claire was finally ready to play. The Grand Bellamy Hotel ballroom glittered like something from a dream. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings painted with classical frescoes, their light reflecting off champagne glasses and diamond jewelry. The city's elite had turned out in force: politicians, business magnates, old money families, and everyone who mattered in the complex web of power that ran through the metropolitan area. Claire stood near the entrance beside Adrian's wheelchair, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. The midnight blue dress Elena had chosen fit perfectly, and Claire could feel eyes tracking her movement through the room. She'd learned to recognize the different types of stares: curiosity, envy, calculation, desire. Tonight she felt all of them. "Smile," Adrian murmured. "You look like you're facing a firing squad." "I might be." "Then at least look beautiful doing it." His hand covered hers briefly, warm and steadying. "Remember the plan. We work the room for an hour, establish presence, then during the main auction I'll make the announcement. And if people react badly, then Marcus and his team will handle it, but they won't. I've spent 5 years building this image, this reputation. One revelation won't destroy that." Adrian's voice dropped lower. "Trust me." Claire squeezed his shoulder in response, and they moved into the crowd. The next hour was a masterclass in social navigation that all of Claire's training had prepared her for. She smiled at the right people, laughed at mediocre jokes, deflected invasive questions with practiced grace. Senator Reeves introduced her to his wife Margaret, who turned out to be as shrewd as she was elegant. "You must come to lunch next week," Margaret said, her gaze assessing but not unkind. "I'm always looking for young women interested in our foundation's work." "Adrian tells me you have a particular interest in education reform?" Claire had never said any such thing, but she recognized the opening for what it was. "I'd be honored, Mrs. Reeves." "Margaret, please, we're going to be great friends, I can tell." Margaret's smile was genuine. "Your husband is a remarkable man. I hope you realize how fortunate you are." "I'm beginning to," Claire said, surprised to find she meant it. They were circulating near the bar when Claire felt someone watching her with unusual intensity. She turned to find a woman in her early 30s staring at her with barely concealed hostility. The woman was beautiful in a sharp, deliberate way: platinum blonde hair, a red dress that cost a fortune, and eyes like chips of ice. "Who's that?" Claire asked Adrian quietly. Adrian followed her gaze, and something dark flickered across his face. "Veronica Sterling, my ex-fiancé." Claire's stomach dropped. "Your what?" "It was years ago, before my father died, before the accident. We were engaged for about 6 months before I realized she was more interested in my last name than anything else." Adrian's voice was carefully neutral. "I ended it. She didn't take it well." Veronica was moving toward them now, her smile sharp as broken glass. Claire felt Adrian tense beside her. "Adrian," Veronica said, her voice dripping false sweetness, "how wonderful to see you. And this must be the new wife, the one who replaced Madeline Hastings at the last minute." Claire's blood went cold. How did she know? "Veronica?" Adrian's voice was ice. "You're looking well. Still married to that hedge fund manager?" "Divorced, actually. Turns out he was embezzling from his clients. Such a shame." Veronica's gaze raked over Claire. "I heard the most interesting story about your wedding, about how the bride wasn't quite who everyone expected." "Rumors," Adrian said smoothly. "You know how people talk." "Do I?" Veronica leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that only Claire and Adrian could hear. "I also heard that the real Madeline Hastings is back in town, that she ran away rather than marry you. Makes one wonder what kind of man scares a girl so badly she flees to Mexico." Claire felt Adrian's hand tighten on the wheelchair's armrest, saw the muscle in his jaw clench. She recognized the signs of his anger now, subtle but unmistakable. Before Adrian could respond, Claire stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. "You must be misinformed. My stepsister had personal matters to attend to, and I was happy to step in. Adrian and I have known each other for quite some time. The timing simply worked out in our favor." Veronica's eyes widened slightly. She clearly hadn't expected Claire to speak. "Stepsister? How convenient. And here I thought—" "You thought wrong," Claire interrupted, channeling every ounce of authority she'd learned from watching Adrian. But then that seems to be a pattern for you, doesn't it? Making assumptions, spreading gossip, inserting yourself into situations that don't concern you. She smiled, sweet and deadly. Adrian told me about your engagement, about how you tried to use him for his money and connections. I can see why he chose to end it. Veronica's face flushed red. How dare you? Ladies, a smooth voice interrupted. They all turned to find a man in his 50s approaching, distinguished and silver-haired with the kind of presence that commanded attention. I hope I'm not interrupting anything unpleasant. Adrian's expression shifted to something more neutral. Thomas? Not at all. Veronica was just leaving. Veronica shot Claire one last venomous look before sweeping away, her red dress trailing like blood. The man, Thomas, watched her go with amusement. Still causing trouble, I see. Some things never change. He extended his hand to Claire. Thomas Blackwood. I run the Blackwood Group, and you must be the infamous Mrs. Kane. Claire, she said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive. I've been eager to meet you. Adrian's kept you quite hidden away these past few weeks. Thomas's gaze was sharp, evaluating. Tell me, Claire, what do you think of our fair city so far? It was a test. Claire could feel it in the way he watched her, waiting to see how she'd respond. I think it's a place where power and perception matter more than truth, Claire said carefully. Where the right connections can open doors, and the wrong enemies can close them. A fascinating place if you know how to navigate it. Thomas's smile widened. Well said. Adrian, you've chosen well. She's clever. He turned his attention back to Claire. I knew your father, actually. Richard Hastings. Good man. Terrible card player, but honorable. I was sorry to hear about his passing. Claire felt her throat tighten. You knew him? We sat on a few charity boards together. He loved talking about you, his brilliant daughter, studying art history, making him proud. Thomas's expression softened. I'm glad to see you've landed on your feet. Richard would have been pleased. Before Claire could respond, the lights dimmed slightly, and a voice announced that the auction would begin in 10 minutes. Thomas excused himself, and Claire found herself alone with Adrian again, her emotions churning. You did well with Veronica, Adrian said quietly. Better than I expected. She knows about Madeline, about the switch. She suspects. There's a difference. Adrian looked at her. But yes, it's becoming public knowledge, which is why tonight's revelation is perfectly timed. We control the narrative before someone else does. Marcus appeared at their side, his expression serious. Boss, we've got a situation. Victoria Hastings just arrived. She wasn't on the guest list. Adrian's jaw tightened. Where is she? Near the main entrance with two people I don't recognize. Male and female, both look Eastern European. They're asking to speak with you. Claire felt ice forming in her stomach. Eastern European, could it be? Volkov's people, Adrian finished grimly. Apparently Victoria decided to bring reinforcements. He looked up at Marcus. How many? Just the two that we can see. But there could be more outside. Adrian was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he nodded. All right. Bring them to the private room off the main hall. Claire, stay with Marcus. I'll handle this. No. Claire's voice was firm. If Victoria brought them here to make trouble for both of us, I should be there. Claire, you said we're partners, that we face things together. She met his eyes. So let's face this together. Adrian studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Fine. But stay close to me and let me do the talking. The private room was small and ornate, clearly designed for discreet conversations during events. Victoria stood near the window with two people who radiated danger, a man in his 40s with scarred knuckles and cold eyes, and a woman slightly younger with the kind of stillness that suggested violent capability. Victoria's face when she saw Claire was a mixture of triumph and vindication. Claire, how lovely to see you looking so well. Victoria's voice was sugar over poison. I don't believe you've met my associates. This is Dmitri and Katya. They work for Marcus Volkov. Adrian's expression remained neutral, but Claire could feel the tension radiating from him. Victoria, this is quite the entrance. What do you want? What I've always wanted. Justice. Victoria moved closer. You see, when you married Claire instead of Madeline, you violated our agreement. The debt was supposed to be forgiven in exchange for my daughter, my real daughter, marrying into your organization. But you took a substitute, a fraud. Claire is legally my wife. The marriage is legitimate. Is it? When it was predicated on deception? Victoria's smile was cruel. Mr. Volkov doesn't appreciate being cheated. When he learned that the wrong girl walked down that aisle, that his debt forgiveness was based on false pretenses, well, he was quite upset. Dmitri spoke for the first time, his accent thick but his English clear. Mr. Volkov believes he is still owed the original $2 million, plus interest, plus penalties for the deception. His gaze flicked to Adrian. He sent us to collect. Adrian laughed, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. Collect? From me? Volkov must be losing his mind. Mr. Volkov knows about your... Dmitri paused, his eyes dropping to the wheelchair. Limitations. He thinks perhaps you are not as strong as you once were, that perhaps the Kane organization is vulnerable. And Victoria here told him that, Adrian said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Told him I was weak, that the marriage was a fraud, that he could squeeze money out of me. Is that about right? Victoria's confidence wavered slightly. I simply told him the truth. The truth. Adrian's hands gripped the wheelchair's armrests. Let me tell you a truth, Victoria. Your husband didn't borrow $2 million from Volkov. He won it from him in a fair game. Volkov threatened you to get it back, and Richard paid to protect your reputation. That debt was fabricated, manufactured to cover Volkov's embarrassment at losing to a civilian. Dmitri's expression didn't change. Mr. Volkov's memory of events is different. I'm sure it is, but I have documentation. Every hand played that night, every bet, every win. Richard Hastings kept meticulous records, and I made sure to acquire them after his death. Adrian's smile was cold. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back to Volkov and tell him that the debt was always fake, that I know it, and that if he tries to collect 1 penny from me or my wife, I'll release those records to every major player in the city. Let them all know that Marcus Volkov creates fake debts to extort money from dead men. Katya shifted slightly, her hand moving toward her jacket. Marcus, who'd been standing silently by the door, moved faster. He had a gun out and aimed at her before she could complete the motion. I wouldn't, Marcus said conversationally. The room went very still. Dmitri raised his hands slowly. We are just messengers. Then deliver my message. Adrian's voice was steel. The debt is void. The marriage is legitimate. And if Victoria ever approaches me or my wife again with these fabrications, I'll make sure Volkov knows exactly who's been feeding him lies. Dmitri and Katya exchanged glances, then nodded. They left without another word, leaving Victoria alone with Adrian, Claire, and Marcus. Victoria's face had gone pale. You can't do this. You can't just... I can do whatever I want, Adrian said quietly. I'm Adrian Kane. I run this city. And you're a woman who's exhausted every bit of goodwill she ever had. He leaned forward slightly. Here's what's going to happen, Victoria. You're going to leave this hotel. You're going to go home. And you're going to stay away from Claire, from me, from anything connected to my organization. If you don't, I'll release documentation showing that you've been systematically embezzling from your late husband's estate for 3 years. Tax evasion, fraud, theft, enough to put you in prison for a decade. You're bluffing. Am I? Adrian nodded to Marcus, who pulled out a tablet and showed Victoria the screen. Claire couldn't see what was on it, but she watched the color drain from Victoria's face. How did you... I make it my business to know things. Adrian's expression was merciless. Go home, Victoria, and pray I never have a reason to use this. Victoria looked at Claire, and for the first time there was real fear in her eyes. You've changed. You're not the girl I knew. No, Claire said quietly. I'm not. That girl died 3 years ago. You killed her. Victoria fled. In the silence that followed, Claire felt her hand shaking. Marcus quietly holstered his weapon and stepped outside to check the corridor. Are you all right? Adrian asked. Claire let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That was intense, I know. Adrian's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry you had to see that side of things. The threats, the violence, it's not... Don't apologize. Claire moved closer to him. You protected me. Protected us. That's what matters. She paused. Did you really have documentation on her embezzling? Of course. I told you, I make it my business to know things. Victoria's been skimming from the estate since your father died. Nothing massive, just enough to maintain her lifestyle without selling assets. But it's enough to put her away if needed. Claire thought about the woman who'd controlled her life for 3 years, now brought low by the same kind of manipulation she'd used on others. There was a poetry to it. The auction's starting, Marcus said from the doorway. You ready? Adrian looked at Claire. Are we? Claire nodded. We're ready. They returned to the main ballroom where the charity auction was in full swing. A famous actress had just bid $50,000 on a weekend in Paris. The energy in the room was electric, champagne flowing freely as the city's elite competed to outspend each other for worthy causes. Adrian positioned himself near the front, with Claire standing beside his wheelchair. She could feel the weight of attention on them, could see Veronica Sterling watching from across the room with calculating eyes, could sense the undercurrent of curiosity and speculation. The auctioneer was finishing up a piece of contemporary art when Adrian raised his hand. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Before we continue, I'd like to make a brief announcement." The room went quiet. The auctioneer looked confused but stepped aside. Adrian took a breath and Claire felt his hand reach for hers. She took it, squeezing gently. "Most of you know me as Adrian Kane," he began, his voice carrying through the ballroom. "Head of Kane Industries, philanthropist, and yes, the man in the wheelchair, the man who survived a car bombing 5 years ago and lost the use of his legs." Claire could feel the tension in the room ratcheting up. People were leaning forward, sensing something significant. "What you don't know," Adrian continued, "is that I've been lying to all of you for the past 3 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. Adrian released Claire's hand and gripped the wheelchair's armrests. The injuries were real. The months of physical therapy were real. But the extent of my disability? He pushed himself upward, rising from the wheelchair with deliberate slowness. That was carefully constructed fiction. He stood. The ballroom erupted into chaos. People shouting, gasping, pushing forward to see better. Camera phones appeared, flashing in the dimmed light. Claire heard Veronica's voice rise above the din, shrill with shock. Adrian stood there, tall and solid and undeniably powerful, one hand still gripping the wheelchair for balance, but clearly on his own 2 feet. "I maintained this deception for one reason," Adrian said, his voice cutting through the noise, "to identify my enemies, to see who would mistake my perceived weakness for opportunity. And I learned everything I needed to know." He released the wheelchair entirely, standing independently now. The room fell silent again, everyone transfixed. "Some of you are angry right now, feeling deceived, and you have every right to be." Adrian's gaze swept the crowd. "But understand this. In my world, showing weakness is an invitation to attack. The wheelchair allowed me to separate allies from predators. Those who treated me with respect despite my supposed limitations have earned my loyalty. Those who tried to use it against me?" His smile was sharp. "Well, they've learned a valuable lesson tonight." He turned slightly, extending his hand to Claire. "My wife knows. She's known almost from the beginning, and she's stood beside me anyway, learning this world, becoming part of it. Claire isn't just Mrs. Kane in name. She's my partner, my equal. And anyone who wants to do business with Kane Industries going forward will treat her with the same respect they show me." Claire took his hand, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on her. This was the moment, the culmination of 3 weeks of training, of transformation, of becoming someone new. She stepped forward, and together they faced the crowd. The applause started slowly. Thomas Blackwood, standing near the front, began clapping with deliberate slowness. Margaret Reeves joined him, then Senator Reeves, then others. Within moments, the entire ballroom was applauding, the sound building to something thunderous. Not everyone was clapping. Veronica stood frozen in shock. Several others looked angry, betrayed. But they were the minority. Most people were smiling, nodding, some even laughing at the audacity of it all. Adrian had turned his greatest weakness into his greatest victory. The auctioneer, recovering from his shock, raised his voice. "Well, that was certainly unexpected. Shall we continue with the auction?" The evening resumed, but everything had changed. People approached Adrian differently now, not with pity or careful courtesy, but with open respect and sometimes fear. They looked at Claire differently too, no longer dismissing her as an accessory, but seeing her as what Adrian had declared her to be, his partner. Thomas Blackwood found them during a lull, shaking Adrian's hand with genuine admiration. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You played the entire city for 3 years. Not the entire city, Adrian corrected, just the parts that needed playing. And the lovely Mrs. Kane knew? Thomas looked at Claire with new respect. You kept this secret from everyone. That's impressive. My husband's secrets are safe with me, Claire said, surprised by how natural the words felt. After Thomas left, Claire and Adrian found a quiet corner. Adrian was leaning more heavily on his cane now. The standing had cost him. She could see it in the tightness around his eyes. Are you in pain? She asked quietly. Some. It'll pass. Adrian smiled at her. You were perfect tonight. Everything I hoped for and more. I just followed your lead. No. You stood beside me as an equal. There's a difference. Adrian's expression grew more serious. Things are going to change now. Some people will respect us more. Others will see us as a threat. Are you ready for that? Claire thought about Victoria's face, about Veronica's shock, about the weight of all those eyes watching her. She thought about the girl who'd scrubbed floors and accepted every humiliation, and how far she'd come from that person. I'm ready, she said. And she was. The rest of the auction passed in a blur of bids and champagne and careful conversations. Claire and Adrian worked the room together, really together now, with Adrian on his feet more often than not, though he returned to the wheelchair when the standing became too taxing. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Claire found herself on the balcony overlooking the city. The light stretched out endlessly, a glittering map of power and possibility. Adrian joined her, leaning on his cane. Quite a view. It is. Claire looked at him. What happens now, after tonight? Now we consolidate. Some people will try to test us, see if the revelation changes anything. We'll need to show them it doesn't. Adrian was quiet for a moment. There's also the matter of the Whitmore estate. Claire turned sharply. What about it? The trust dissolves in 7 years, but there are ways to accelerate that. Legal challenges, demonstrations of mismanagement. If you want, I can help you take back what's yours. Claire thought about the house, about her father's legacy, about everything Victoria had stolen. A month ago, she would have jumped at the chance, but now, I don't want it, she said finally. The house, the estate, any of it. That life is over. I want something new, something mine. Adrian nodded slowly. Then we'll build you something new, whatever you want. I want to mean something, Claire said quietly. I spent 3 years invisible, powerless, erased. I want to matter. You already do, to me, to this organization. Adrian's hand found hers. But I understand what you mean. We'll find you a purpose beyond just being my wife. Trust me. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe below them. Claire felt the weight of the ring on her finger, no longer a shackle but a symbol of something else. Partnership, protection, possibility. Thank you, she said finally. For what? For seeing me. For seeing what I could become instead of what I was. Adrian's smile was soft, genuine. Thank you for becoming it. They returned to the ballroom for the final farewells. Adrian and Claire presenting a united front as couples and individuals approached to congratulate them, to express shock, to angle for advantage in this new dynamic. And through it all, Claire stood tall. No longer hiding, no longer afraid, no longer invisible. The girl who'd married a stranger had become a woman who stood beside one of the city's most powerful men as his equal. And this was only the beginning. The morning after the auction, Claire woke to find the penthouse flooded with sunlight and her phone buzzing with notifications. Dozens of messages, missed calls, social media alerts from accounts she'd barely used before. The revelation had made headlines. Adrian Kane's deception splashed across every news outlet in the city. She scrolled through the messages. Some congratulatory, some curious, some outright hostile. One in particular made her pause, from Madeline. I saw the news. You actually did it. You became someone. I'm happy for you. Really? M. Claire stared at those words for a long time before setting the phone aside. Adrian was already in the kitchen, dressed casually in dark jeans and a gray sweater, making coffee without the wheelchair anywhere in sight. He moved with a slight limp, but otherwise seemed comfortable on his feet. "You're up early," he said, pouring her a cup without asking. "Couldn't sleep?" "Too much happening in my head." Claire accepted the coffee gratefully. "Have you seen the news?" "All of it. Some outlets are calling me a genius, others are calling me a fraud. Most are just confused." Adrian's smile was wry, exactly as expected. "Senator Reeves called 3 times. He wants to know where his loyalties should lie now that the playing field has shifted. Let him wonder." Adrian leaned against the counter. "We have bigger concerns. Thomas Blackwood requested a meeting for this afternoon. He has a proposition." "What kind of proposition?" "The kind that could legitimize everything we've built, if we're smart about it." The meeting took place in Blackwood's office, a corner suite in one of the city's most prestigious buildings, all mahogany and leather and the quiet confidence of old money. Thomas greeted them warmly, gesturing for them to sit in the chairs facing his massive desk. "Adrian, Claire, thank you for coming." Thomas settled into his own chair, his expression serious. "I'll get straight to the point. Last night's revelation has created an opportunity, the kind that doesn't come along often." "I'm listening," Adrian said. "Kane Industries has always operated in the shadows, profitable, powerful, but not, how shall I put this, respectable. Last night showed the city that you're willing to operate in the light, that you can be strategic, patient, forward-thinking." Thomas leaned forward. "I want to bring you into the Blackwood Group as a partner. Merge some of our operations, create a legitimate business empire that combines your resources with my connections." Claire watched Adrian's face, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. "What's the catch?" Adrian asked. "No catch. Just conditions." Thomas pulled out a folder. "You'd need to divest from certain holdings, the gambling operations, the protection rackets, anything that can't withstand legal scrutiny. Keep the legitimate businesses, the real estate, the shipping, the investments. Go clean, essentially." "You're asking me to give up half my income. I'm asking you to trade short-term profits for long-term security. Right now, you're the king of a criminal empire. One federal investigation and it all comes crashing down. But if you partner with Blackwood, you become untouchable. We've been playing this game for 100 years. We know how to insulate wealth, how to navigate legal challenges, how to build something that lasts generations." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "And what do you get out of this?" "Access to your distribution networks, your contacts in Asia and Eastern Europe, your ability to make things happen that I can't accomplish through traditional channels." Thomas smiled. "I'm not naive, Adrian. I know you'll maintain certain operations under the table. I'm just asking that Blackwood Group's name stays clean." Claire felt Adrian's hand find hers under the table, squeezing gently. "A question." She squeezed back. "An answer." "I'll need to review the terms," Adrian said finally. "But I'm interested." Thomas's smile widened. "Excellent. I'll have my lawyers draw up the preliminary documents." He turned his attention to Claire. "And you, Mrs. Kane, what are your plans now that you're one of the most talked about women in the city?" Claire hadn't expected the question. "I'm not sure yet. Margaret mentioned you might be interested in our education foundation. We could use someone with your perspective, someone who understands what it's like to be overlooked, underestimated. There's real power in that kind of insight." The idea sparked something in Claire. Purpose beyond just being Adrian's wife, beyond just surviving. "I'd like to learn more." "Wonderful. I'll have Margaret set up a meeting." Thomas stood, signaling the end of their discussion. "Adrian, Claire, I think we're about to build something remarkable together." As they left Blackwood's office, Claire felt the weight of possibilities settling over her. "Are you really going to do it? Go legitimate?" "Parts of it, yes. Thomas is right. I've built something that can't last in its current form. Eventually the law catches up to everyone. Better to transition on my own terms." Adrian glanced at her. "What about you? Are you interested in the foundation work?" "I think I am. It feels right, using what I've learned, what I've survived, to help other people." Claire paused. "Is that naive?" It's hopeful. There's a difference. Adrian's expression softened. You're allowed to want to do good things, Claire, even in a world like ours. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and transformations. Adrian's lawyers worked with Blackwood's team to structure the partnership. Claire started attending foundation meetings with Margaret Reeves, learning about grant programs and scholarship initiatives. The penthouse became a hub of activity, business associates coming and going, strategy sessions lasting late into the night. Through it all, Claire felt herself changing, not just in appearance or capability, but in something more fundamental. She was becoming the woman she'd pretended to be that first night at the cathedral. Confident, powerful, someone who mattered. It was during one of these late-night strategy sessions that Marcus burst into the room, his expression urgent. "Boss, we have a problem. Victoria Hastings is at the building's front desk. She's demanding to see you both. Says it's an emergency." Adrian and Claire exchanged glances. They hadn't heard from Victoria since the auction, hadn't expected to hear from her again, given Adrian's threats. "Let her up," Adrian said finally, "but have security stay close." Victoria looked terrible when she entered the penthouse. Her usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, makeup smudged, hair falling out of its updo, her hands shaking. She looked like she'd been crying. "What do you want, Victoria?" Claire asked, her voice harder than she'd intended. "I need your help." Victoria's voice cracked. "Please, I know I don't deserve it, but Madeline's been arrested." Claire's stomach dropped. "What?" Derek came back, showed up at the house 3 days ago with some scheme to make quick money. Madeline went along with it because she's weak and stupid and still in love with him. Victoria collapsed into a chair uninvited. "They tried to rob a jewelry store, got caught on camera. The police arrested them both this morning." Adrian's expression remained neutral. "And you want what, exactly? For me to make it go away?" "I know you can. I know you have connections with the police, with the courts. Please. She's my daughter. She's all I have left." Claire felt the old familiar pull, the instinct to help, to save, to sacrifice herself for people who'd never done the same for her. But she was different now, stronger. "Why should we help you?" Claire asked quietly. "After everything you've done? After 3 years of abuse, of lies, of treating me like I was nothing?" Victoria's face crumpled. "Because despite everything, you're a better person than I am, than I ever was." She looked at Claire with red-rimmed eyes. "Your father saw it. Even at the end, when everything was falling apart, he'd talk about your kindness, your strength. He knew you'd be okay because you had something neither Madeline nor I ever had, actual character." The words hung in the air like a confession. Adrian spoke first. "What are the charges?" "Attempted robbery, conspiracy. The DA is pushing for 3 to 5 years. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "She won't survive prison. You know she won't." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "David, it's Adrian Kane. I need a favor. Madeline Hastings, arrested this morning for attempted robbery. What can you tell me?" He listened, his expression darkening. "I see. And the evidence?" "Mm-hmm. What about the boyfriend?" Another pause. "Right. Okay. Can you get me 15 minutes with the DA tomorrow morning? Good. I owe you one." He hung up and looked at Victoria. "The evidence is solid. Madeline and Derek were caught on multiple cameras, but Derek has a record. This is his 3rd offense. The DA wants him, not Madeline. If we can deliver testimony against Derek, they might be willing to reduce Madeline's charges to a misdemeanor, probation instead of prison." Victoria's face flooded with relief. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "I'm not doing this for you," Adrian said coldly. "I'm doing it because Claire asked me to, because despite everything you've put her through, she's still capable of mercy. Something you never showed her." He turned to Claire. "Do you want to see Madeline before we arrange anything?" Claire nodded slowly. "Yes, I think I need to." The detention center was everything Claire had imagined, and worse. Fluorescent lights, the smell of industrial cleaner failing to mask something sour underneath, the sound of metal doors clanging shut. Madeline sat in the visiting room wearing an orange jumpsuit, her face puffy from crying. When she saw Claire, something complicated passed across her face. "You came." Victoria asked us to help. Claire sat down across from her stepsister. What were you thinking, Madeline? I wasn't. That's the problem. Madeline laughed, but there was no humor in it. Derek showed up with this plan. Said it would be easy, that we'd make enough money to disappear somewhere together, and I wanted so badly to believe him. To believe someone wanted me for more than just what I could give them. So you robbed a jewelry store? We tried to. Derek had done it before, apparently, in 3 other cities. But I didn't know that until the police told me this morning. Madeline's hands twisted together. I'm so stupid. You tried to warn me about him, and I didn't listen. Claire studied her stepsister. Madeline looked young and lost and terrified. Nothing like the spoiled girl who'd made Claire's life miserable for 3 years. Adrian can help, Claire said finally. He can get your charges reduced if you testify against Derek, but you'll have to tell them everything. About his plan, his past crimes, all of it. He'll hate me. He used you. There's a difference. Madeline was quiet for a long moment. You really have changed. The old Claire would have just helped without asking for anything, without making me face consequences. The old Claire was a doormat. I'm not her anymore. No, you're not. Madeline met her eyes. I'm sorry for everything. For every mean word, every humiliation, every time I stood by while Mother treated you like garbage. I was weak and jealous and cruel, and you didn't deserve any of it. Claire felt something in her chest loosen, a knot she'd been carrying for 3 years. I know. Can you forgive me? Someday. Maybe. Claire stood to leave. Right now I can help you. That's enough. Adrian arranged everything with the efficiency of someone who'd navigated the legal system many times before. The DA agreed to reduce Madeline's charges in exchange for her testimony against Derek, who turned out to have outstanding warrants in 3 states. Madeline would get probation, community service, and a permanent record, but she'd avoid prison. Victoria was pathetically grateful, offering promises and apologies that Claire didn't bother listening to. It didn't matter anymore. Victoria's opinion, Victoria's approval, Victoria's anything. Claire had moved beyond needing any of it. A week later, Claire stood in her father's study at the Whitmore estate for the first time in 3 years. Adrian had arranged for her to access the room as part of the legal proceedings around Madeline's case, and Claire had decided to take one last look at the place where her father had spent so much of his time. The study was smaller than she remembered. Dossier. The books on the shelves were the same ones he'd collected over decades, their spines familiar and comforting. Claire ran her fingers along them, remembering afternoons spent reading in the corner while her father worked at his desk. She found what she was looking for in the bottom drawer of that desk, a box marked with her name in her father's handwriting. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to her, dated from the last 2 years of his life. Claire sat on the floor and read them all. Her father had known about Victoria's affair, about Volkov's threats, about the impossible position he'd been trapped in. He'd written it all down, not as excuses, but as explanations. As apologies to a daughter he knew he was failing. I'm trying to protect everyone, one letter read. But I'm realizing that sometimes protecting everyone means saving no one. I've made terrible choices, Claire Bear. I hope someday you'll understand why, even if you can't forgive them. The last letter was dated 3 days before his death. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and everything has fallen apart the way I knew it would. Victoria will take everything. She'll make you suffer. And I won't be there to stop her. That failure is the greatest regret of my life. But I know you, Claire. I know you're stronger than you realize. You'll survive this. You'll become someone remarkable. And someday, when you're standing in the light I could never quite reach, you'll understand that you did it yourself. That you didn't need me or anyone else. You just needed the chance to see what you were capable of. I love you, I'm sorry, and I'm so very proud of who you'll become. Dad, Claire sat there with tears streaming down her face, the letters scattered around her, and felt something fundamental shift in her chest. Her father hadn't been perfect. He'd made terrible choices, failed her in ways that still hurt. But he'd loved her, believed in her, seen the strength in her that she'd spent 3 years forgetting she had. She gathered the letters carefully, placed them back in the box, and stood. This was goodbye to the girl she'd been, the girl who'd read in this study and believed the world was fair, the girl who'd trusted that love and kindness were enough. That girl was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper, more complicated. Someone who'd learned that the world rewarded strength and punished weakness. That power mattered more than fairness. That survival sometimes meant becoming someone you never thought you'd be, but also someone who could still choose kindness, still choose mercy, still choose to help people who didn't deserve it, because that's what her father had taught her, even if his own life had been a cautionary tale about the cost of those choices. Claire left the Whitmore estate with the box of letters under her arm and didn't look back. 2 months after the auction, Claire stood in front of a room full of scholarship recipients at the Reeves Foundation's annual gala. These were kids from backgrounds similar to hers, people who'd been overlooked, underestimated, forced to fight for every opportunity. "I know what it's like to be invisible," she told them, her voice steady and clear. "To feel like you don't matter, like no one sees you. To wonder if you'll ever be more than what your circumstances have made you." She looked out at their faces, young, hopeful, scared, and saw herself 3 months ago. "But you're not invisible. You matter. And what you've survived, what you've overcome to be here tonight, that's your power. That's your weapon. The world will try to make you small. Don't let it. Take every opportunity, every chance, every door that opens and kick it wider for the people behind you. That's how we change things. That's how we win." The applause was thunderous. After the gala, Adrian found her on the balcony overlooking the city. He was walking more now, using the wheelchair only when the pain got bad, or when strategic advantage required it. Tonight he stood beside her, his shoulder touching hers. "That was a good speech," he said. "Margaret helped me write it." "But you meant it. That's what matters." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "The Blackwood partnership is finalized. Papers signed this afternoon. We're officially legitimate businessmen now." "How does it feel?" "Strange. Liberating. Terrifying." He laughed softly. "Turns out going straight is harder than being a criminal. More rules to follow. But safer. Much safer for both of us." Adrian turned to look at her. "I've been thinking about something. About us." Claire's heart rate picked up. "What about us?" "This started as a business arrangement, a marriage of convenience, but somewhere along the way, it became something else." Adrian's expression was more open than she'd ever seen it. "You became my actual partner, someone I trust, someone I care about, more than I expected to." Claire felt warmth spreading through her chest. "I care about you too. You saved me, gave me a chance to become someone I didn't know I could be. You saved yourself. I just provided the opportunity." Adrian reached for her hand. "I know this marriage wasn't what either of us planned, but I'd like to make it real, not just legally, but actually real, if you want that." Claire looked at their joined hands, thinking about everything they'd been through, the lies and the truth, the danger and the safety, the moments of genuine connection in between all the performance. She thought about the girl who'd walked down that cathedral aisle, expecting cruelty and finding something far more complicated. She thought about the woman she'd become, stronger, harder, but still capable of choosing kindness, still capable of hope. "I want that," she said finally. "I want us to be real." Adrian's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way that transformed his entire face. He pulled her closer, and when he kissed her, it felt like a beginning instead of an ending. They stood there on the balcony as the city sparkled below them, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something that actually mattered. 6 months later, Claire stood in the Whitmore estate one final time. The house had been sold, not to Adrian, but to a young family with 3 kids who reminded Claire of herself at that age. The money from the sale would go into a trust that Claire controlled, earmarked for the scholarship fund she and Margaret had established. Victoria was moving to a smaller place across town. Madeline had completed her community service and was talking about going back to school, maybe studying social work. Both of them had become smaller in Claire's mind, not unimportant, but no longer defining. Claire walked through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing on hardwood floors she'd scrubbed so many times. She touched the banister, the door frames, the windows overlooking the garden, saying goodbye to the girl who'd lived here, the girl who'd believed love was enough, that fairness existed, that good things happened to good people. That girl was gone, replaced by someone who understood that power mattered more than goodness, that survival sometimes required compromise, that strength came from unexpected places, but also someone who'd learned that you could be powerful and kind, strategic and honest, hard and hopeful. Someone who'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and transformed it into the best. Adrian waited in the car outside, scrolling through his phone. When Claire climbed in beside him, he looked up with a smile. Ready to go home? Home. The penthouse with its city views and its carefully constructed safety. The place where Claire had become someone new, where she'd learned to fight, to negotiate, to see the world clearly without flinching away from its ugliness, where she'd found actual partnership with a man who'd started as a stranger and become something that felt dangerously close to love. Ready, Claire said. As they drove away from the Whitmore estate, Claire watched it disappear in the side mirror. All those years of pain and humiliation, of being invisible and powerless, shrinking to a point and then vanishing entirely. She was Claire Kane now, partner to one of the city's most powerful men, director of a scholarship fund that would help hundreds of kids like her. Someone who mattered, who was seen, who'd claimed her own story instead of accepting the one other people had written for her. The girl in the wedding dress had walked into a trap and found a door instead. And on the other side was a life she'd built herself, piece by piece, choice by choice, until it became something worth having. Adrian's hand found hers in the space between their seats, warm and solid and real. Claire squeezed back, holding on. They drove through the city as evening fell, two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to step into the light together. Not perfect, not uncomplicated, but real in a way that mattered. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.